All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fellowship of the Golden Age. And today we have Dylan from across the ocean. Hey, Dylan, how you going?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Good.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to know you a bit more,
Mm.
and I'm sure everybody else is too. So, let's get kicked off with in the direction we always start. Would you give your take on what a separate self is?
Hmm. Well, the separate self to me is a sense of a sense of self born of separation. I mean, it's quite simple. It's it's a self that's based off the perception of separation rather than oneness. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. And so
hmm
how do separate selves sort of manifest themselves in your life? Like,
Sorry that. Oh my gosh, the doorbell just went off.
yeah,
For me, separate selves, I mean, they manifest in the same way that everyone else's do. Reactions to things I encounter, to things people say, situations that I believe I should or shouldn't be in, expectations, all the things,
yeah,
I've dealt
yeah.
with, I've said it before, I've I feel like I had more than the average person to work out in this life, and I've had so many separate selves I've had to work through and surrender and let go of. And the interesting thing about separate selves is that, it's sort of this they're all based upon illusions, and what's the biggest illusion around them is we think that they do something for us. We're quite attached to our separate selves. When in
Mm,
reality, the separate selves are the very things that limit us. So we think the separate selves are going to give us what we truly want with wholeness, peace, love, all the things that humans go after in this world. And in reality, the separate selves are the things that are keeping us from that, right?
mm,
And so it's
mm.
it's it's really interesting. So uh, on my own, I don't want to ramble too much, but on my own spiritual path, I sort of went into this. I started in this phase of seeking to validate the separate selves, building up the spiritual ego, becoming, in my mind, more and more special, more and more sophisticated, more and more above other people, or, special, or all the things, right? And then now it's more, my spiritual path is very much about actually surrendering those separate selves, which I thought made me so important before. So for me, I guess to clarify more, it's, the separate selves are the thing that they're the aspects of our psychology that keep us away from our true nature. They cloud our perception of our true nature and who we truly are. So,
Mm,
and that's what
mm.
the spiritual path is about.
I know it's a funny paradox, isn't it? Because like I can see that we created these cells as as a survival mechanism, like to somehow just,
Mm,
survive this earth and
yeah.
our experiences in it. And it seemed like they were helping us in a
Yeah.
way. But
hmm
yeah, and then we come to this point where we realize like no, it's actually like really causing a lot of tension in my being, and
hmm
I don't
Yeah.
need this anymore.
Well, it's funny because it's like we're like drunken beggars stumbling after dark, on this planet where we come into this embodiment not having remembered where we came from, and we're drunk with Maya, with delusion. And it's this really fascinating process of starting to receive glimpses outside of the veil, or experiencing hard enough knocks that we look for something outside of our, perception filter, our separate selves, our sphere of self. And it's quite the play. It's said that the earth is it's actually, there's like a waiting list to embody on Earth. And I always thought that was insane. Why would anybody want to come to Earth? Who would be so stupid to come to this planet? My goodness.
Have
But
my spot.
yeah, right, right. Yeah, king of the losers, right? But but it really is a tremendous opportunity because there's
Yeah.
very, very few places in creation that are as difficult as Earth, but also give the greatest opportunity for the quickest growth. Because it's like, if
Mm.
you think about it, it's like if you're a baseball player, I know they don't probably have baseball in Australia, but if you let's say you're you want to be in the major leagues. Well, you don't want to sit at, you don't want to play t-ball for your entire life. You want to,
Yeah.
you want to challenge yourself, right? You want to go where the challenges are. And I think that, this planet gives us a tremendous opportunity to grow and to become more and to, I mean, if you can ascend from planet Earth, I mean, it's quite the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's now, for me at least, I know for many more, like it's a realistic goal.
yeah,
Like, we can ascend. So
yeah.
blows my mind really.
Hmm.
Um, so could you give like, well, I know you're a parent, so I'm interested, could you give like a description of like some sort of a separate self that's associated with
Hmm.
parenthood? I'm just like
Yeah.
putting you on the spot here.
A lot. There's a lot. So, um, my wife and I, before we were married, we were together. We were best friends for a few years, and she's 5 years my senior. And we were in this. We are entrepreneurs. We were in this business together, and we started dating when I was 20, and then she got unexpectedly pregnant in 4 months, and I was entirely on. It's very similar to Kim, actually, what he was explaining in my
Mm,
podcast with him. It was extremely unexpected, and it threw me into a whirlwind that I didn't even you know, it's like I looked at people. I had a very, very particular control game where I thought I knew exactly how my life was going to go. I had it planned out. I knew at what age I
mm,
wanted to have kids. I knew how successful I was going to be at that age. I thought, oh, by the time, at 20, I'm like, by the time I'm 25, I'm surely going to have all my psychology worked out and then I can have kids. Uh,
mm.
but, in a lot of ways, I was completely blinded by my own ego. And so having kids was a shock to the system. And it was a shock I needed because I had become such a closed system within myself. And so, I mean, what kind of reactions haven't I had as a parent? I mean, that's the question to ask because I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they're just the loveliest little souls. But I've had every reaction under the sun. When they're screaming and I'm trying to focus and I think, why isn't there an off button on this thing? I get upset and angry and I've had every situation as being a parent, and um, it's really been quite the wake up call. It's been quite the wake up call because it really, especially in the beginning, showed me how much I had to work on it. It showed me humility. It got me beyond myself to not be so focused on myself and to not be so um, micromanaging of every situation in my life, to learn to go with the flow. And so, I mean, I feel like I could talk for hours about all the lessons that I've learned from being a parent, but it's been quite the journey, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd imagine like one of the first ones, just judging from how you sort of opened up talking about that, one of the first things you'd have to transcend would be, you know, that idea that, I've got my life planned out, this should not be happening. Like, you've
Yeah,
actually just got to go to that first
yeah,
step of surrender, of acceptance, like, this is my
yeah,
flow, this is
yeah. And I
the
didn't do
journey.
that. So at the beginning,
Mm,
so my wife's Canadian and she got pregnant. We were living in the United States, and I had to, within a couple of weeks, take my whole life, pack it into a suitcase, drive to Canada, where when I'm the type of person where I tend to shake up situations unexpectedly. If someone is trapped in a pattern, I seem to trigger everybody. And so her family wasn't very fond of me being very traditional, very, by the books, the good Canadian lifestyle, like it was very extremely difficult for me. And so I was already working through a lot of past life traumas. And so adding that on top and all the change, it was really, really difficult. I started having panic attacks. It was an extreme. And then when my daughter Sage was born, I was just in such this overwhelmed mode. Having a baby screaming and not getting any sleep for weeks, and it was I I nearly went insane. I nearly went insane. But it really woke me up. It really woke me up to what I had to work on, what I had to
mm, mm,
transcend, and it really got me to start to question this sense of superiority, the specialness that I thought I had as a spiritual. When you live a life that's very controlled and things aren't that difficult, it's very easy to be a spiritual person. It's very easy to sit in a cave and to be very, very spiritual when
Hmm.
nothing's disturbing you. But when you're in the midst of all the chaos, you really find out what you're made of. And so those first few years were extremely difficult. And yeah, it's just been a huge, and then, yeah, there were a lot of things in those years that really shook me up. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I get it because, you can't just check out. Like,
No.
it's full time. Like, I know I could, when all the trauma was hitting me, like, I'd just get home from work, smoke a joint, check out, that was my time to sort of not have to deal with anything. But you just don't have that option.
No. You don't. Yeah, and you're in I was in survival mode. And then,
Mm,
the thing is Samantha and I, my wife, had been together for 4 months when she got pregnant. And so you're still like working out. Who is this person? How do you live with a new person? And you're still adjusting. And then throw a baby into the mix, throw family drama into the mix, and then throw moving back to the United States. And then my parents got divorced unexpectedly, and there's a lot of drama there. And it was just one big crazy time. But, you know, looking back now, I see that it was necessary in a lot of ways. It's just it really is the school of hard knocks on this planet. It does help us grow. It
mm,
does. And so, I would just, if for anyone's listening, if you're going through something difficult, if you can assign a purpose to it, it makes it so much easier to go through. If you can assign
mm,
the purpose that when life is always working out for me, it's always working for my growth in consciousness. It's not against me. It's not trying to put me down. It's not trying to hurt me. It's trying to build me up to higher levels of awareness. And so whatever you're going through, if you can shift your meaning, the meaning that you give it, that makes all the difference. It's like in life, we can't always control what's happening to us, but we can always assign a different meaning. We can always control the meaning that we're giving things. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good, very important pointer for others. And
yeah.
yeah, everything is a gift. Everything is an opportunity,
Mhm.
no matter what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So will you I'm just yeah, will you sort of now like share a bit about, your journey and everything? And I think
Yeah.
what's sort of like unusual with you is that you found the path when you were quite young, right? Like
Yeah.
just give us a bit of a lead into that and
Yeah. I think I was 13 or 14. So it was kind of an interesting turn of events. So I was homeschooled
yeah.
for a lot of my childhood, and so I was in this Waldorf homeschool program, and one of the classes I chose to take was a Buddhism class. And I remember doing the class, and I was didn't really my dad was an atheist, and so my mom was sort of like pop Christian, not really anything, but kind of like metaphysical, like a whole bunch of things combined, just searching, right?
Mm,
But I was more connected to my dad, and so I was going on these paleontological digs, like fossil hunting with scientists and all this stuff with the universities, and like just I thought I was an atheist, but below that, my whole childhood, I felt this deep sense of depression with that, related to that, with the questions that were going unanswered. And I often took on other people's energy. So when I was young, I would be surrounded by somebody and I would shift and I would be in their state of consciousness for a moment. And it would be so shocking to me
mm,
that it would send me into a deep depression because it was like I would take on their energy and I would take on their state of mind for a moment, and it would just be so overwhelming for me that I would have a really strong reaction to it. I also grew up in a house that was part of the Underground Railroad, which I don't know if you're familiar with what that was, but it was like when
yeah.
the slaves and everything, and it was also a mental institution at one point. So it was like a really old house, Victorian house. It was not very high
Ah,
energy
so it was
stuff.
one of the houses
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
house.
Yeah. It
Wow,
was very, very,
wow.
it was very creepy, very low vibration, but I was very sensitive to that. And so, I experienced it every night. I would be like dragged down into this deep, dark place, and it was terrifying. And I just couldn't understand where all this darkness was coming from. And so, anyways, I back to the Buddhist story. So I was homeschooled. I chose this Buddhist Buddhic teaching, and I remember the first thing they said was, the Buddha said that life is suffering. And I thought to myself, life is suffering. Is that all there is to life? And they didn't really give much of an explanation. And this was really confusing to me because I'm just like, gosh, if life is suffering, if that's like kind of the purpose of life, if that's what life is, then why is life even worth living?
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
so and it was a very materialistic approach to the to Buddhism, and it really disturbed me. And so fast forward a year or two, and my mom
Like
was
how
listening
old are
to
you at this point, roughly? Like,
12 or
okay.
13.
Yeah.
So, fast forward shortly thereafter, and my mom's listening to Wayne Dyer, and who's a spiritual author in the New Age movement. And this Wayne Dyer was mentioning this person called Saint Germain. I thought, who is this Saint Germain? And he was saying something about the I am discourses, and I was so confused by it. I'm like, the I am discourses, Saint Germain, never heard of this. So I Googled it, and these little green books showed up. So I ordered one, had my mom order it, and dove into the chapters, and it completely transformed my life. It was as if an entirely new world opened up to me, and everything made sense. And at the time, it was this beautiful story of just adventure and magic and God and just everything. And it was so invigorating to my being. And so the next thing I searched was Ascended Masters, on Google, and what came up with ascendedmasteranswers.com. And my goodness, uh, all these questions I had had growing up were answered right there. And it was fascinating. And so I dove into these teachings and was, you know, going completely. I was homeschooled, so I basically lived like a monk for the next 8, through high school, through middle school, and I was just studying all these teachings and didn't really have any connection to any other Ascended Master students or anything. Um, and yeah, it's really been quite the journey. But there's just so much to unpack and so many lessons that I've learned throughout it. But like I really feel like it's like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And
Mm,
I was
mm.
just my entire life, I was just nothing in this world satisfied me. I always felt like the odd one out. I just couldn't relate to anybody. And it was always as if I was searching for something. My mom was into psychics, and I would sort of approach these psychics as if like I was looking for, I couldn't put words on it, but I was always like looking for a guru. I was looking for someone with spiritual insight, and
Mm.
nobody seemed to have what I was looking for. And it was extremely
Yeah.
disheartening and
Mm.
it put me into this panicky mode because I just felt like it just, something didn't feel right being an embodiment. And now I have a much better idea of what all this means, but at the time it was quite disconcerting. So the Ascended Master teachings really saved my life. It was incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that. Like I remember when I finally sort of, began to genuinely search and I remember sort of saying, I want to find a guru, but I was
Mhm.
looking for, that in the physical realm and I'd find like interesting sort of people who were, what I consider to be they played a part on the path and everything, but none of the human ones ever satisfied me. I was just always like, nah, I could just see, and I couldn't put myself at the feet of this master, and that's what they
Yeah.
wanted. And yeah, I
Yeah.
can't be subservient because there was an element of superiority going on quite
Yeah.
often. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, and then once these teachings turned up, that was like, that's it, the
Yeah.
answer finally.
Yeah, I always wanted something. I wanted a teacher outside of the human biases. I read Autobiography of a Yogi at one point. I actually became a Kriya yogi, and I really respected, Yogananda and Sri Yukteswar and Lahiri Mahashaya, those gurus. But yeah, at the same time, I recognize the idiosyncrasies, certain separate selves that they had. And I just thought, I just want something beyond all of this, and hence the Ascended Masters. That's where the Ascended Masters come in.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
but yeah, it's really
So
interesting.
what I think's unusual with you, Dylan, is that you are, relatively young and
Yeah,
in the teachings, but then you describe how you've had a lot of shit more or less to
Mm.
work through and everything. And I'm just sort of curious to hear, like, it's just sort of showing that this, we're carrying a lot of baggage from somewhere
Yeah.
else into this lifetime. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I came in, yeah, I mean, my family growing up, there's no external reason why I should have any sort of trauma. I mean, my mom was a wealthy businesswoman, had a pretty functional family, grew up in a pretty safe town. I mean, quite boring rural town in the middle of Kansas. God knows why they lived there in the first place, but I digress. I came into this life with so much to work on, so much past life trauma, this sense of just this sense of this deep and profound desire to feel whole, but it's like at the same time this tremendous sense of loneliness and depression and just wounds somewhere in my being. And it was extremely difficult to work through. And at the same time, it was coupled with this. I remember when I was 4 years old, and I was walking. We were going to some amusement park, and I looked up at these huge roller coasters, which when you're four, they look even bigger. And I thought to myself, I'm going to do something someday that changes the world. I want to do something important for the world. And at a certain age, you could say, wow, or at a certain state of consciousness, you say, wow, that's a positive desire, right? But it sort of laid the foundation for the separate self that really controlled me for a good portion of my life. And I spent a lot of time in this reactionary pattern of wanting to feel superior, wanting to feel special, wanting to feel important, wanting to feel like I made a difference, wanting to feel um, seen, all of those things. And I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls that we can get into as spiritual students is this desire to be important, this desire to be special. And I will say that the most important thing I've ever done for my spiritual growth is letting go of the desire to be important. You
Mm,
know,
mm.
it's like the amount of peace that comes from that is incredible. But um, as I mentioned, I would be taken down into the astral plane every night and, seeing these demons and these dark forces and all these things and feeling all this darkness. And um, I was really driven to find a solution, to find an answer, to find some way out of it. So, I guess we all have our different motivations. Mine was certainly the pain that was motivating me. And
Yeah,
since then I've been shown the traumas that caused it. I saw in past lives things that happened to myself, to the people I cared about, the things that I went through. I hate the cold, and the reason why I hate the cold is from an embodiment in Siberia, if you can imagine what I'm talking about. It's like
yeah, yeah,
during the Soviet uh, era. And so it's the moral of the story is it's been a rough couple thousand years, and I think as all ascended master students are, you look in the Facebook groups, you see the little the little egos going at each other, people working out their separate selves, people getting in little conflicts, people ruffling each other's feathers. And I think that one thing that's important to realize is that it has really been a rough few thousand years. We
yeah,
all
yeah.
have been through the damn ringer. And I think that if we can be kinder to ourselves and each other, give each other a little leeway, give each other a break, give ourselves a break, and let go of some of the tension. I think that a lot of us are holding on to so much tension that we
Mm,
just become these stress balls. And the thing is I think that the antithesis of spiritual growth is this. What's working against our spiritual growth is this tension that we're carrying with us, and what creates this tension obviously are these separate selves, but
yep.
it's these expectations of how we should and should not behave, how others should and should not behave, what it means to be a good spiritual student, what it means to be a good person, what it means to grow, like all of these expectations that we're holding. Um, Growing spiritually isn't a process of building up the self. It's about letting it go. It's about letting go of the things that keep us out of our natural state. Jesus said that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must become as a little child. Well, I don't know if you've ever met a little child, but I have.
Mm.
They are wild and uncanny, and they're just themselves in the purest sense of the word. And so if we can become more childlike and just surrender our expectations and surrender these tensions that we're carrying with us, we could do so much more for the manifestation of the golden age. It's like I think sometimes, and I'm totally going on a rampage here, so I apologize if I'm going off topic, but it's like
Ramble you want.
sometimes we're working against we're our own worst enemies because it's like it's like we're trying to build this bridge across the river, but instead of just working together, we're bickering over who's doing what, and who's wearing this, who's going to be in this position, who's going to be in that position, and which one, who has more boards than the other. Like we're working against each other by being in this tension, being in this judgmental state of consciousness, bickering with each other. And I think that the most important thing that we can do as spiritual students is to try to find a greater unity, try to just forgive people before they even do anything, and just
Mm, mm,
acceptance. When you tune in to the ray of acceptance, the vibration of acceptance, it is the most freeing thing, one of the most freeing things you can tune into as a human being, because for thousands of years we have been programmed with a standard for how we should and should not behave, and how we should and should not be. I mean, that's the entirety of duality. It's defining good and evil. And so by tuning in with that flame of acceptance, letting go of this duality consciousness, if even for a moment, can you bring you more relief than you thought possible.
absolutely. And also, yeah, that flame of acceptance, and then also like this flame of honesty, like, where,
Yeah.
like I'm thinking this, feeling this, oh, I'm just going to say it, and, just
Hmm.
not hold on to, like, any worries about how that's responded to, like, or whether
Hmm.
it's reacted to or not, just
Yeah.
letting it just flow on out and being
Yeah.
the self, being natural.
Yeah. And there's this Swami who I really love. His name is Swami Ramdas, not the American one. He was an Indian yogi. And he talked about how, at a certain point, he saw that in his mind, the greatest way to help someone's spiritual growth was just to see God in them. And I know that, we have different teachings and, the separate selves and all these things, and working on our psychology. We're very, very focused on the psychology, which sometimes can very much become a control game. But if we can see God in each other more, I think that it does a whole lot more than, it's holding that immaculate concept, being able to just see the beauty in each other, regardless of our differences, regardless of our faults, just give each other some grace. And I think it's like the flame of mercy. We're just giving each other the flame of
Mm.
mercy. We're embodying that flame. And my goodness, can't you just feel the peace and the just like taking it back? It's like taking a huge weight off your shoulders. Like, my goodness, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's just that trick of like, because the separate self wants to take it personally, like, how
Yeah.
whatever happens in the world. And it's just, the minute we sort of just go, this isn't personal, and just drop that and just see that other person, whoever they
Mm,
are. And yeah,
yeah.
it's, oh, so much easier.
Yeah. And I'm really blessed that I was never around a spiritual movement, because a lot of times those spiritual movements can actually work against people's spiritual growth. They can
Mm,
definitely help, but being young and not really having established my own foundation yet, when I first discovered the teachings, it would have been very easy to get, and I did in a sense get trapped in certain, just like, here's how a spiritual student is, here's how an ascended master student is, like
mm,
here's what you do and you don't do. And I remember this was probably 5 years ago when I was living in Oregon. I saw this sign, Ascended Master like event. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. I'm not going to name which organization it was, but I went to this little dictation that was happening from the Ascended Masters with this group of people, and you know, it was such a culture shock, because people were very tense, very controlled. There was like this sort of tension in the air that you could feel. Um, and I remember there was this situation that happened, and I felt there was this really strong presence that came through me and spoke through me, and um, other people really, really felt it. And after that moment, they started to sort of look at me like I was very special. They started to look at me like, oh my gosh, Dylan, you just have the flow of the Holy Spirit, and you're this and you're that. And it made me really uncomfortable. And I was thinking
mm,
to
mm.
myself, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want anything to do with being special. I don't want to be put on a pedestal in any way. I'm certainly not perfect. I have so many things that I'm working on. And I could just feel how it's so easy to get trapped in these patterns, these patterns of, really feeling like you're a very advanced spiritual student and you're saving the world for Saint Germain and you're Blu-raying people and all these things,
Yeah, yeah.
and it can be a trap for a lot of students. And we have to be very vigilant against the ego when it tries to get us into these patterns.
Yeah, because like in that moment when somebody else is saying, you are special because you said
Yeah,
that, then that's just putting Christ straight into this mental box. And
right.
yeah, we, you know, yeah, we're more than that, like, because we don't know
Yeah,
what we're going to be in the next moment either.
yeah.
It's the unique thing about these teachings is that, there is no guru. Kim has never
Hmm.
professed to be a guru, and you know, we're learning how to be ourselves, to
Hmm.
express our freedom, and that's what I'm looking to do with these interviews, is to just
Yeah,
allow people the opportunity to step up and just be whoever they are in the moment,
yeah.
and express that. But
That's
yeah.
exactly what we need.
Mm,
Yeah, because I had been in the groups years ago, and it was a lot of bickering. It was a lot of, I'm going to point out this person's separate self, and this person's going to point out that
mm,
separate self. And, you know, I think that a more constructive approach is like what you're doing, where it's just, let's just share our beings. And yeah, if we need to point something out, we can lovingly do so. But, you know, I think that the majority of students in this dispensation are sincere. And we're all
mm,
sincerely looking to grow. And I think that a lot of us are hard, we analyze ourselves and nitpick ourselves enough.
yeah.
And I think that it's like the healing flame of love can do so much. And I think
Mm,
that by people simply expressing their creativity and just accepting that and loving that and cherishing that and building each other up in that. I mean, could you imagine how many people are in the group? 1,000? Imagine 1,000 people singing their song to the greatest of their ability, living their life with the greatest creative expression that they can achieve, and think of the difference that that can have. Think of the difference that that can have. 1,000 people expressing the highest aspect of Christ that they can express wherever they're at. That's big.
yeah, yeah. So yes. So Dylan, like,
Yes.
you're you're obviously, from my perspective, like, you're
Yeah.
so young, and it's such a vital point in your life, and clearly, you've done loads and loads of work already and seeing yourself. So it's like, you've got this amazing foundation laid, like, without sort of trying to project, like, what will happen. But
Mm.
what are your dreams for, where you want to take your life and everything, and yeah, and how that marries in with, what you've learned here through these teachings and with the
Mm.
masters.
Well, the thing I love most about life, um, in an autobiography of a yogi, Sri Yukteswar, who was Yogananda's guru, said that God is ever new joy. And one of the things I love most about life is those unexpected, beautiful things that you could never have imagined yourself, and yet they happen in the most wonderful ways possible. And what the biggest part of my growth recently has been, I did the whole course of the healing your birth traumas. Those 4 books. I've done those 4 or 5 times in the past few couple years. Insane. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you about the growth I've had from that. And recently, I've just started becoming more neutral. I feel like recently I sort of let go of a self that last little bit of this one self that wanted to be special, that wanted to be important, that wanted to do something, that wanted to be a teacher or whatever, significant. And I feel like I'm in this state of surrender. I own a business right now. We sell, functional mushroom soda, trying to help people get healthy and, you know, switch their habits. And I love creating new health supplements for people to help them have the most vibrant bodies and health and well-being possible. But that's just one aspect. I think for me, it's my vision is I just want to be in the flow of the river of life. I think that expectations, uh, there's a saying, but I'm not going to say it. It's a little vulgar. But I've tried to let go of my expectations because they trap me just as much as they give you certainty. They trap you in a gilded cage. And so for
Mm,
me, I want to flow with the river of life. I want to sing my song, express my heart, express whatever God wants to express through me, and just leave this planet and meet my ascended teachers and feel like it's a job well done. Feel like, yes, because I've had lifetimes where I left and I was quite disappointed with how I behaved and the karma that I
mm,
made and the life that I lived. And it indelibly fixed this determination within my mind to not take the easy way out, to not let myself become completely immersed by the veil of Maya. I've uh, everyone's past is filled with things that we might not be proud of, and I just in this lifetime I've had a very strong sense that I can't let myself stray. It's like the razor's edge, and I've experienced it all on this planet, and I really just I want this to be, you know, I don't want to leave anything on the table, and I want to leave this life having ascended, having accomplished, you know, be, experiencing myself as a being an embodiment on earth. I don't want to accomplish anything in the world anymore. I want to be who I am and experience what it's like to be me in the schoolroom of earth.
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to like witnessing you on your journey. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because for me, from the old farts perspective, like, yeah, to
Yeah.
sort of look back and think, oh, what would life have been like if I'd
Yeah.
taken the direction that you have and everything? And so it's just sort of, yeah, I know without sort of projecting, but it's sort of, I just
Mm.
find it exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. It is quite exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I yeah, there's a lot from I suppose, like even Kim, like, he sort of
Mm.
just went straight onto the spiritual path too and everything. And um so yeah, it's just gonna be it's yeah, I'm excited to see where you go and how you express yourself and as you just keep letting go of all of these blocks and express
Yeah.
your Christhood fully.
Well, I'm really
So
excited to be connecting with all these students, these Ascended Master students. It's really
yeah.
fun. I used to have so many reactions to Ascended Master students, I couldn't engage with them. But now I just love all of it. I love all of it, and it's fun. So it's kind of a new experience. It's really enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I just had this vision of it's like, we're each this unique facet and we each
Yeah,
have stories to tell and perspectives to shine upon, something. And so I love sort of getting these new perspectives all the time. It's like, oh yeah, it's like you just shift round, the sphere and just have a look from a new direction through someone else's eyes. And
exactly.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I used to have I used to, 7 or 8 years ago, I would go in the Facebook group and I would post something and someone would disagree with me and I would get so fired up and I'd be thinking about it for days and just like, this person doesn't have Christ discernment. Surely I do, and I know what I'm talking. I felt inspired here, and it was so much tension. And of course I projected there's something wrong with them. I'm just going to leave this group because
Yeah.
obviously I'm above this consciousness, obviously in my mind. And now it's a lot more ease, and someone can disagree with me and I just like, wonderful, beautiful. Like, we don't need to think in the same way. I'm just going to cherish you as a human being and realize that, we're both working for our own self-transcendence and we're looking to help the transcendence of the planet as a whole. So let's work together. You know, it doesn't threaten me anymore. Other people, I think
Mm,
that, in general, we need to let go of this self that's constantly threatened by differences. And rather than being threatened by differences, we start seeing them as a strength. We start seeing them as opportunities to paint with different colors upon the canvas of life.
Yeah, yeah. And then also when we're recognizing that somebody might be reacting to us too, just realizing that, in the same way we forgive ourselves for our own reactions and
Mm-hmm.
separate selves, just to forgive them too, just to realize it's not
Yeah.
real, what's going on
Yeah.
there.
And I'm not saying I'm perfect at this at all, but I've started to let go of this self that wants to change other people. Even if it's an ascended master student, even if I see a separate self in them, um, I just I'm j- it's like instead of judging them or instead of feeling threatened or instead of, thinking I need to say something, I just feel acceptance. Because at a
Mm,
certain point, at least for my psychology, there's this aspect of me that wanted to play God, that wanted to be the shining white horse that comes in and fixes all the problems. But I'm starting to come to this awareness that there's this deep, beautiful, magnificent, all-pervading intelligence that's guiding each and every one of us. And that all-pervading intelligence, is infinitely more aware and intelligent than my mind or my human intellect. And so, yeah, there's maybe times where I say something spontaneously that helps awaken somebody or helps someone see something. But when I feel that reaction or that separate self step in, I'm letting it go. And I'm just accepting that person. I'm just loving that person. I'm sending that good intention, that immaculate vision towards that person. And I think that's something that we can all do for each other. And I think that can have a multiplication factor, you know?
mm.
I don't know why
Yeah.
it's interesting. This podcast is kind of going on about ascended master community. I didn't have any expectations for this podcast. It's sort of just flowed in that direction. It's so bizarre, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sorry if I'm
surprising,
repetitive. Sorry if I'm repetitive.
huh? Yeah, well, we are a part of a community,
Yeah,
and this is, Saint Germain's golden age is about coming into unity.
yeah.
It's the age of community. So the way I see it, like, let's start expressing, what we sense community is really about
Mm,
now, and start living that.
mm,
Yeah, and so you're just shining sort of some, yeah, examples upon that, like how you can sort of, yeah, like how to do that. Yeah. Um, so anyway, we're sort of pretty close to sort of the final point. So if there one last thing that you'd like to sort of speak about and close with, Dylan?
mm. Let me think. I mean, for me, and I might be sounding like a broken record, but the biggest thing that's contributed to my acceleration of growth over the past couple of years, it's um, it's really, really been letting go of of this letting go of this inner tension, letting go of the things that I hold on to, letting go of the things that my expectations for myself, for God, for the world, for how other people should behave, for how the world should be. And I guess my closing remarks would be, um, whatever you're going through, uh, you can get through it. Sometimes life and the separate selves and the projections from the mass consciousness, it can be overwhelming, and you can feel like there's no way out, that it's never going to end, and that, when you cut off the head of one dragon, 10 more appear. Um, but just know there's this beautiful divine plan through all of it. And by letting go of your tensions, by taking a step back, by loving yourself more, by accepting yourself more, by going through these processes, you will become a free being. And that is the greatest accomplishment you could ever have on earth. And so,
Mm,
um, give yourself some love, give yourself some acceptance, and know that you're doing really, really beautiful work. Each and every person that's listening to this, to you, um, we're, if you knew how much you were loved by God and by life, by the masters, you would let nothing stand in your way.
yeah. And you know what? Like, there's even, it's like a paradoxical thing, like we're letting go of that
Mm,
tension and surrendering. But then in letting go, we're actually flowing in with our divine plan, our divine mission. So,
mm.
you know, there is a direction we're going, but it's like we've got to let go of what's holding us back from that direction. So there, it's not like just let go of everything and yeah, it's all good,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. It's a very it's an intelligently directed letting go. It's not an
Hmm.
egotistical letting go. It's not a letting go of responsibility, a letting go of, your effort in the spiritual path, but it's letting go of the ego's control, letting go of the definitions you put upon yourself. Because if you can just close your eyes and if you can just tune in with the presence of an ascended master and you can feel that bubbling, ever new, ever creative, ever expanding joy and love that they have for you personally as an individual being. It's transfiguring, it's transforming, it's exhilarating, it's everything.
Hmm.
And sometimes the mind keeps us trapped by overcomplicating everything. And so if we can return to simplicity and just tune in with the ever expanding presence that we are, the formless, the ever changing, ever new aspect of the conscious you, then we can come back into our normal awareness and we can look at these selves and these patterns and these things that we're outplaying, and they just seem like one great dream, a dream in the mind of God, and we're sleeping, and one day when we leave this embodiment, we will wake up and we'll look down upon the dream that we were dreaming while we were asleep and laugh, and it will seem like the blink of an eye. And then we'll go back in for another round or we'll leave the schoolroom forever. But this opportunity we have today is so precious, and so don't waste it. Don't take it for granted even for a moment.
Hmm.
Wake up every day with gratitude in your heart and with a great purpose to transcend yourself and to shine your light upon all people.
Perfect. Okay. I think this is the perfect place to stop. Energetically beautiful. So
Mm.
thank you, Dylan.
Thank you for your time and thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.